global mean temperature change. The global mean temperature change relative to 1850 to 1900. Basically, this period that we call as the pre-industrial period. So what happened, or what will happen from 2020 to 2100 to the global temperature? And for this particular report, they only focused on this scenario, like SSP 8.5. That means the emission is very high. I mean, due to the socioeconomic growth, they consider that there will be a lot of greenhouse gas emission. And based on that, the temperature may increase from maybe from 1.5 degrees Celsius to this much, about 4.5 degrees Celsius. And we can see when that is going to happen. Just look at this graph. And the Climate Atlas, the NCA5 Atlas, they are trying to predict if the global temperature in 2050 raises to 2.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial period. What is that impact on US? And they consider what happens in each county. So I understand it is a bit difficult to understand, but if you really want to understand what our students are going to explain, you should have an idea on this. So here you can see the explanation for that. As I mentioned, this atlas provides data on changes in regional climatic parameters. When we say regional, it is mostly based on the county level, such as annual average precipitation or annual average temperature, all those data. Then these changes are projected based on specific levels of global warming relative to the 1991 to 2000. They kept that period as a baseline period. Then they consider these global warming levels corresponding to 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, 3 and 4 degrees Celsius. And based on that, they try to give an idea on if the global warming increased to 4 degrees Celsius, then what will happen to our Harris County, or what will happen to the Waller County? And this is what our students are going to explain. So, and this another one, our students, they are the major climatic parameters or conditions they are going to explain include the change in days with extreme precipitation, change in annual precipitation, extreme precipitation, then average annual precipitation, and number of days over 100 degree Fahrenheit and number of nights over 70 degree Fahrenheit. With that, I'm concluding here, and I invite Simon to explain his findings or explain his report based on this course. Thank you.
If you have any question, we'll address them later. We'll have like maybe a couple of questions for each student, but we will have time hopefully by the end of the presentation if you have further questions as well.
So thank you everyone for coming today, and especially thank you to Professor Dr. Andrew Dissler. It's a great opportunity for us to present our work in front of you all. So this is MD Simon Islam, and I am presenting my county level climate change impact assessment analysis. So let's forward, and I selected 3 counties. As you can see that the counties is Lubbock County, Hartspath County, and the Colorado County in Texas. So why I selected these 3 counties, I mentioned here that if you see the Colorado County are mostly the farmland, small towns, and forest areas. If you think about the diverse geographic profile of these 3 counties, and for the Hartspath County, you see that there is a desert landscape and ranches lands over there. And lastly, the Lubbock County, which is the mostly urbanized county and well developed, and their agricultural cultivation mostly depends on the farmlands. And if you see the population density as well, there is a 21.1 people per square miles for the Colorado County. And for the Hartspath County, as this is a desert landscape areas, so the density is very low, below 1 person per square miles. And for the Lubbock County, as this is an urbanized county, so the population density also very high. And for the population growth compared to the 2023 and 2024, as you can see, the growth is very high for the Hartspath County, and also it's increasing for all the counties in these 3 counties. So here the economy for the Colorado County, the economy is like mostly based on the agriculture and education and healthcare. And for the Lubbock County, the economy based on the as this is urbanized county, so some manufacturing industries there, and also agriculture, ranches, and service. And for the Hartspath County, mostly economy based on some ranches, and also as it's a border area county with adjacent to the El Paso, Texas El Paso. So their economy is mostly based on the transportation and logistics and other things. And just I want to put some ideas here about the median income by demographic groups. Here you can see that mostly all of the 3 counties, the Black and African Americans groups and some part of the Hispanics or Latino groups, they have less amount of annual income compared to the other group of the people. So if you think about the housing vulnerability, the Hartspath County has 22% severe housing problems, and again the Lubbock County, which is highly urbanized but still has 19% housing vulnerability. And for the home ownerships, like 73% Hartspath County, and Lubbock County 55%, and Colorado County 81%. Those people have their own home, but apart from that, the other people don't have home, and they rented on or rented house or do some other arrangement for the living. So let's come to the climate change projections, impact, and mitigation adaptation plans for Colorado County, Texas. Here, starting from the change in the precipitation, especially change in the extreme precipitation and change in the extreme precipitation days, extreme precipitation amount, and as well as change in the annual precipitation in terms of the 4 global warming level, starting from 1.5 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. Here, the extreme precipitation days and amount both increases with the global warming level, as we can see from the graph, and for the annual precipitation trends decreases with the global warming level, as you can see. So our impacts on these impacts on the Colorado County mostly creating the flooding. Either it's flash flooding and flooding in the on this county, and there will be interrupted outdoor operation and transportation and logistics. So the adaptation and mitigation plan could be providing the climate-proof infrastructure in low-income areas, as I already shown that which areas and which group of people have low income. So we have to focus on that, and we have to elevate the critical facilities like the schools, hospitals, the other things. We have to elevate their height, and also we can do some restoration wetlands to mitigate the flooding impacts, and also develop retention structure and vegetative buffer. And lastly, we can also redesign the available culverts and other water management infrastructures. So now think about the changes in the wettest day and of the year, as well as wettest day throughout the 5 years period. So in this wettest day, for considering the considering a year or a 5 years period, the wettest day events increases with the global warming. So considering the number of wettest days increase, we can think about the impacts like the community dispersion, displacement, and also disruption of livelihood and economy. So what we can do to mitigate and adapt these things, like we can ensure the support for uninsured residents, and also we can develop post-flood temporary residency for the housing for the low resource areas, and we can also provide equitable access to the emergency management and response in a equitable basis to all the people of the community. And for the temperature increase, this is a very visual thing that we can see that there is steady increase in average annual temperature as well as the summer temperature. So temperature is increasing as a whole for all the global warming level from 1.5 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. So the climate impact would be the reduce of the as a whole agricultural production of the Colorado County, and also the shortage of the drinking water, and also there will be higher cooling demand in the Colorado County. So the adaptation and mitigation plans could be providing and doing the breeding of drought tolerance crops, and also not only crops but also we can also breed for drought tolerance cattle, livestock as well. So also we can save water from waste while irrigation and distributions. We know that a lot of water we waste for the over irrigation and distribution water from one place to another. So we can also save water, the waste of water. So we need to do the afforestation. We have to plant more trees to reduce this impact, and also we can do some urban tree canopies and green. So we can also do some green infrastructure, green building at the urban areas and the towns. We can also enhance public cooling infrastructure, especially in rural and low-income communities, to protect the vulnerable population in the Colorado County. And here you can see the hottest average summer temperature and hottest day of the year. So the lowest average summer temperature and hottest day of the year, this means there is a accumulated shift of the temperature from lower to higher level. So both the lowest and highest temperature are increasing for the Colorado County. So the impact could be the shorten the growing season for major crops and stress livestock, impacting Colorado County's agriculture economy. So it will as the temperature is shifting from lower to higher, so the crops will get less time to for their life cycle, and also there will be poorer athletic performance and health outcomes. So adaptation and mitigation plan could be introduced short duration crops and drought tolerance crops, and also ensure availability of abounding hydration drinks and equitable access to the safe water, and promoting indoor games more, so to adapt those things, and monitor the air quality and the other health related issue with increasing temperatures. So now if you see the max temperature, like extreme temperature, which is above 95, above 100 and above 105. So for those extreme temperatures, you can see all are increasing from 1.5 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius as a steady level of increase. So we can assume that there will be extreme hotter day, and it is increasing in future. So the impacts would be the risk of heat-related illness, mostly heat-related illness, particularly affecting the elderly people as well as the vulnerable people like children and other peoples, and also increasing wildfire risks for outdoor activities. So those impact could happen because of this extreme temperature increase. So adaptation and mitigation could be develop heat action plans, creating early warning system and open cooling centers, and establish outreach program during heat waves. So we have to do those things to mitigate and adapt with the extreme heats and avoid outdoor recreation if possible. So this is the last thing that if you see the shifting of warm nights and shifting of down shifting down of cold days. So there will be more warm nights and there will be less number of cold days. So as a whole, there is a shift of temperatures. So it will lead to nighttime heat stress, and also it will impact crops that requires chill hours at night, that requires cooling the temperature at nights. So those crops will be impacted. So the adaptation could be promote heat resilient building design with better insulation, reflecting roofing, and also passive cooling to help home stay cooling overnight, and also to modify crop choice by shifting towards crop that are less dependent on winter chill and periods and more tolerant of the heat. So that's the analysis of the impacts mitigation adaptation plans for the Colorado County. Now I am inviting Katana to present the Lubbock County plan and analysis. Thank you all.
It's gonna come back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Someone.
Okay, hello everyone. Like Simon mentioned earlier, I will be introducing the Lubbock County. And so for the precipitation changes, can you hear me?
If we can raise your voice
Voice a little
a
bit.
little bit, it'll be better.
Okay, so the climate impacts have a higher risk of flash floods and erosions, and this will also increase the flooding in both the rural and urban areas, such as the Lubbock City, which is just like the main area. The adaptation mitigations can be increased by upgrading the stormwater management systems and implementing sustainable land management. And this will enhance the early warning signs, the early warning systems. And here is just a graph showing the extreme precipitation days and the amounts increasing steadily with the increase. And as you can see, with the 4%, with the degree at 4 Celsius has the highest change in days in extreme precipitation. So for the wettest days changing, the climate impacts show that a growing risk of rare but a very intense rainfall does occur, and that potentially causes crop loss and soil degradation. And the adaptation and mitigation for this particular item will help develop better drain advantage infrastructures in both the farmland and the urban centers to prevent waterlogging and flood damaging. And this will also promote the raised bed farming, drainage ditches, and flexible planting schedules to protect crops from extreme rainfalls. And here shows the changes in the wettest days, and both the metrics rise steadily up to 4 degrees Celsius warming over the course of 5 years. And so here is the lowest and hottest temperatures for the Lubbock County. And this climate impact shows the stress like cotton, a key Lubbock crop, leading to potential yield reductions and higher irrigation needs. And the adaptation and mitigation for this will support research and the adaptation and the adoption for crop variations that can withstand heat and that can withstand high heat and nighttime warmth. And here shows the lowest and hottest temperatures increasing with the warming level. And so here are the extreme heat days. And so the climate impact showed that the increased risk of heat-related illnesses and energy demands for cooling, and also our accelerated evaporation, reducing surface water and groundwater availability, which is crucial for farming and urban needs. And our graph is showing us the extreme heat days climbs steadily across all of the thresholds. And the adaptation and mitigation launch a heat risk education campaigns and early warning systems to protect vulnerable populations during extreme heat events. And this would encourage drought and heat-tolerant crops variating and improving irrigation efficiencies in order to adapt agriculture for frequent heat extremities. And so for warm nights and cold days, this will impact our climate by disrupting sleep, which can worsen chronic health conditions and drive up cooling costs. And an alternative for this ecosystem for pest cycles and agricultural growing for agricultural growing seasons, our adaptation and our mitigation does increase tree planting, green roofs, and reflecting buildings materials to counteract urban heat building up from hotter nights. And this would shift from heat tolerant crops to adjusting plant schedules. And so this graph shows the nights over 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which increases significantly, and cold days reduced by 40 days at 4 degrees Celsius. So you can see our parameters for the nights over 70 degrees and our days under 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And so here are also the climate change projections for our impacts and mitigations and adaptations for the Hudson County, Texas. And so here, the climate impact showed that in elevated risk of flash floodings, erosions, and infrastructure damage, the Hudson's desert landscape. And this adaptation and mitigation does build more rainfall harvesting systems and a small reservation to capture sudden heavy rainfalls for drier periods. And this also does show that a sharp increase does occur during the 4 degrees Celsius for our extreme precipitation, decrease in annual precipitations. So our climate impacts also prolong heat waves, which threatens our soil moisture and our soil availability for crops, agricultural and ranchings. And the adaptation for this would be to transition to heat and drought resilient crops and native grassland restorations in order to maintain productivity and reduce erosions. And our highest temperature increases around 7 degrees Fahrenheit among our counties. So here shows our average annual temperatures and also our mean summer temperature changes. And so here are our extreme heat days, and our climate impact show that these elevated risk of heat strokes, dehydration, and mortality, especially in rural areas, are occurring due to the lack of healthcare infrastructure. And in order to help mitigate this, we would need to implement more cooling centers, emergency alerts, and hydration points for vulnerable communities to reduce this heat related risk. And here are some of the most dramatic rises among our counties. And again, you can see that the 4 degrees Celsius does have the highest impacts with the extreme heat issues with our health.
You can use the stick
pointer?
if you want.
And so our climate impacts show that an increase of air cooling using overnight, spiking in energy demand and rising electricity bills, especially in lower income households. And in order to mitigate this, we would need to expand to cooling subsidies and weatherizations, which support rural and also elderly residents to cope with warming nights. And here shows a clear sign of hotter and milder winters. So above is the nights over 70 degrees Fahrenheit and then days under 32 degrees Fahrenheit and at our global warming levels. Oh, and now I will be introducing Simon back to the floor.
Thank you.
You go.
Thanks.
Mhm. Oh, here you go.
You need it.
I don't know how to put it. but I'll
Okay.
keep it here. So just finishing, as you have seen that the three counties analysis, just to compare the vulnerabilities of these three counties. The comparison, as you can see, that the Harshpat County is the most vulnerable county among the three counties, as for the temperature rise, the extreme precipitation rise, and also for the reduction of the annual precipitation. So considering all the parameters, we can say that the Harshpat County is the most vulnerable due to a rural economy, the scarce water resources, and also the high temperature extremes. And for the Lubbock County faces the agricultural risk, and the Colorado County has comparatively less risk due to but must still prepare for the heat-related public health and crop stress. So some recommendation for the Colorado County to adapt, mitigate, and creating the resiliency for this climate change. So the suggestions could be to develop the drought tolerant crops for the to protect the crop productions, and also for to face the extreme flood or flash flood. We can create the vegetative buffer and some natural solutions to reduce down the impact of floods, and to face the extreme heats. We can do like we can facilitate more cooling facilities for the vulnerable people and community, and also we can do some green structure in the in the urban areas and towns, and also we can do some tree plantation, afforestation to reduce down the heat. And for the recommendation of the Lubbock County, we can do the upgrade agricultural water management practice, so through introducing the modern irrigation technologies, and also we can do flood-proof critical facilities on low income and low income housing, and also we can also promote the renewable energy system, and we can implement the urban heat mitigation measures, and also we can support disaster education and emergency preparedness for the county. And lastly, we can do some recommendations for the Harshpat County, as this is the county is impacting more. So we can develop integrated water management strategies there, and we can also improve transportation and logistic resiliency there, and we can do some enhanced rural healthcare system, and we can also create the wildfire prevention, as there is projections of wildfire in this county. So we can do the wildfire prevention and management plans for this county, and also we can invest in nature-based solution like vegetation buffer and the other cultivation practice to mitigate the floods. So the conclusion is the climate change will intensify heat and as well as precipitation extremes across the Harshpat, Lubbock, and Colorado counties, with Harshpat County at highest risks and immediate impacts on this county. And there will be localized adaptation strategies focus on the water management, heat resilience, as well as agricultural innovations, and those are very crucial. And clear, accessible communication with the stakeholders will be a key foster for preparedness and resilience in terms of this adaptation and mitigation of the climate change for this three counties.
Thank you, Simon. So we'll have any other questions? I think for the next speakers, the two previous speakers made it easier for you to for your presentation. So the things that are already common and mentioned by the previous speakers, maybe you can skip on them and recommend that similar measures will be taken. I think the next speaker is Sanjita Guru. She's going to talk to us about 3 counties that she worked on. Sanjita. You can put it on your...
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And thank you, Dr. Faris, and thank you everyone for coming to our course project presentation. I'm Sanjita Groh. I'm a graduate student in Natural Resource and Environmental Science, and this is my topic for our project, assessing the impact of environmental change at selected 3 counties of Texas. So let's move to the introduction. As the climate pattern continues to shift across the United States, local government face a growing challenge, and to understand, there is a pressure to understand the specific risks that's affecting their communities. And also climate variation is already altering the weather patterns and temperature and precipitation across whole Texas, with the localized impact also. So by preparing this project impact, weather pattern, temperature, precipitation across, by preparing this project impact, now counties can reduce, precipitation, vernal population, and enhance the long-term sustainability. So I selected 3 different counties with a different variation. So I will talk about this in detail. I selected Pasco, Travis, and Angelina County, which has which faces each different challenge of their geography, economic, and infrastructure. So this is the map that's showing the variation climate region, because Texas has the 10 different climatic regions. So here is the 10 different climatic region, and I try to become more variable. So I selected from each different ecological region. So if you see here, Pasco is located in Trans-Pasco ecological region, and Travis County is located in Edward Plateau, and Angelina is located in East Texas. So I want to make sure that I'm covering, because I only had 3 counties, and I try to cover from arid, semi-arid to humid, climate. So, also in detail why I selected these counties, because in the ecological context also, this is semi-arid desert landscape, Pasco County. So there is more drought intensity and less rainfall in comparison to other counties. And also it is ideal for exploring the climate impact on agriculture and water management. And for Travis County, it's located in Edward Plateau, and as you all know that Travis County is like urban area, so there is much more infrastructure and everything going on. So we can see the much change in that county. So for the climate concern also, there is urban heat going on, and flash flooding, because there is not that much vegetation in urban areas. So and there is pressure for rapid land usage change, because it's comparatively changing than other counties. And there is also strong, it's also offer a strong case to evaluate the infrastructure stress and public, health vulnerability, and to preserve the biodiversity under climatic variability. So for Angelina County, it's the humid and forested region. So this climate concern has flood risks, several weather events, and increase in vector-borne diseases in this county, because it's kind of humid. And also it supports the flood control and forest conservation and public health in a humid rural area. So these are the comparative overview of each 3 counties. If you see, for the Pasco County, is the area is like higher, but Travis County's area is even like not that much higher, but you can see population is much higher in Travis County than in comparison to other 2 counties. So you can see here urbanization is like having, and there is so much population. And for the economics, for Pasco County, they are mostly depending upon well and gas and education and health service. And for Travis County, as it's already like urbanization, so people are mostly depend upon technology, education, and government services. And for the Angelina County, mostly it's a forested area, and so people are mostly, dependent for economics, for timber and, manufacturing and retail and education as well. And if you see the income also, in comparison to other two counties, Travis County has like relatively nearly double income than other counties. So for the land uses also, except Travis County, both of them are relatively like, ranching, agriculture, like that. But for Travis County, is more urbanization development and recreational area and residential area as well. So for the data we use, Dr. Anup already like, explain you that what we did and what we are trying to show. So I'm not going in a detail, but we use YANSI A5 Atlas for 1.5, 2, 3, and 4 degree for future potential scenarios. So average annual rainfall. So here is the average annual rainfall. If you see here, from west to east, if you see the rainfall pattern,
Can you use the
so what did I do? Yeah, if you see here, this is a, like here is a Pasco County, and you can see here there is like precipitation is relatively lower, and in the middle it's relatively like higher than the Pasco County in Travis County. But if you see in the east side here is the Angelina County, so there is like much higher precipitation. So now there is a change in precipitation. So this graph indicate like each parameter. For the blue bar is showing change in days with extreme precipitation, and for the orange is saying change in extreme precipitation, and for the green one is a change in annual precipitation. So if we go from county to county, I try to combine all of the county together so we can see the variation. So how each county is different from another county, because I'm choosing from west to east, so there has to be some variation in the counties. So if you see change in precipitation with different parameters, all of the parameter is showing like for the precipitation is for the Pasco County is showing less precipitation parameter in comparison to Travis and Angelina County. So in 4 degree Celsius, all of them like Pasco and Angelina County is showing more, but in some for some reason, so Travis County is showing higher in 3 degrees Celsius. So also there is sharp rise in extreme precipitation day, especially 4 degree like that increase more than 50% increase in like 4 degree for 2 counties. So for the climate impact, it's so there will be so much climate impact in those kind of counties. So it will increase the extreme rainfall. Sometimes it will be so much flooding. Sometimes it will be so much drought, So for the adoption, we can do, we can improve our drainage and flooding control system, and also update for the urban counties like Travis. We can also update our infrastructure to withstand heavy rainfall, because if there is no vegetation, so our rainfall is gonna be like, go like flooding or something. So we need much strong infrastructure in like counties like urban like Travis. So this is a change in weighted day. So it's kind of similar to the precipitation, because we are still talking about precipitation. If there is precipitation, then there is weakness. So if you see here, like it's like the same comparison to precipitation. So if you see this blue indicates the change in the weighted day of the year, and orange indicate the change in the weighted day in 5 years. So we are comparing 1 year and 5 years to the different counties. So highest increase 11%, that's in 1.5 degree scenario for the weighted day in 5 years. So just like the previous precipitation, for the Pasco County is much more lower than other two counties like Travis and Angelina County. And if you see for 4 degrees Celsius, Angelina County is showing like higher, but for Travis County is showing higher. So climate impact can be the more intensive single day rainfall event, so which can increase the flood risk, and urban and rural infrastructure may be overwhelmed, and we can also again do the same thing like in rainfall. We can like improve our infrastructure, and we can preserve wetlands and natural flood buffers, and also limit global warming by cutting the carbon emission. We can do that in our own level also, and as a group also we can do that. So let's talk about change in temperature. So here again, there is like 4 different parameters for change in temperature. So blue indicates the change in average annual temperature, orange indicates the change in mean summer temperature, and the lighter blue indicate the change in lowest average temperature, of summer, and green indicate change in hottest day of the year. So if you see here, all of the change in temperature parameters is kind of similar, because it's like saying the same thing. We are talking about the hotness, we are talking about the summer change in temperature, we are talking about the change in heat. So it's kind of similar for all those parameters. And largest heat in the hottest day is in the 4 degrees Celsius. So you can see there is not that much variation in change in temperature for all the parameter, but is kind of high in Travis County. So comparison to other county, that might be it can be the reason because Travis County is urban and it's all developed, and there is not much place to cool down all the buildings, tall buildings and all. So for this also, there is climate impact, more frequent heat wave and heat stress, high heat stress that we are realizing like year by year is increasing. And also expand, we can, to mitigate this, we can expand the cooling system and heat emergency plant also. And also improve the building insulation and urban shading, and also limit, just I already mentioned earlier, we can limit cutting the greenhouse gas emission also. So this is the number of change in number of extreme heat days. So this is according to the days. So how much it changes? So the blue indicates change in the number of day over 105 degree Fahrenheit, and the orange indicate the change in number of days over 100 degree Fahrenheit, and yellow indicate the change in number of days over 95 degree Fahrenheit, and the green one indicate change in the number of night over 70 degree Fahrenheit. So if you see here, there is so much variation in all those change in extreme heat days, because it's like different in different temperature, because it's sometimes it's over 105, sometimes it's over 100, sometimes it's over 70. So for this one, Pasco County is showing much higher extreme heat days, because that can be the reason there is less rainfall, and it's an arid climatic zone, and so it's taking time to cool down, or because if there is rainfall, we are supposed to get more cooler weather, cooler climate, that can be the reason also. And there is constant rise in all heat threshold, indicating the broad vulnerability. So if you see all of the counties, there is a variation, and for change in number of days over 100 degree Fahrenheit, it's showing more more rise than other parameters. So for the there is also climate impact for this also. So there will be increased demand, energy demand for cooler or reduce the hour, because if there is so much heat and our crop can't tolerate that heat, so we are going to reduce our so we are going to reduce our agriculture productivity also. So change in number of cool days. If you see here, there is something interesting. Like in 4 degrees Celsius in Pasco County, there is so much gradual, change in number of cool days than in comparison to Travis counties. So I'm not going in detail right now, but if you see here, like Pasco County has the more, variation and all and higher variation. So if you go to the conclusion, this climate impact assessment developed for County, Pasco, Travis, and Angelina illustrate the significant and varied way in which projected climate change may influence key aspects of local life. And all these 3 counties experience the constant increase in average annual temperature or summer heat or extreme hot days. So at a 4 degree Celsius warming temperature raised by 6 to 8 Fahrenheit, and Travis County is showing the highest increase in hottest day of the year. It can be, I already mentioned, because of the, urbanization and all. And these changes, we have a risk of like public health and energy demand and agriculture productivity. So interestingly, some locations on Pasco counties, as I mentioned earlier, saw an increase in cold days and emphasizing the need for localized climate, because we don't know why it's showing the cold days. So there is much need to localize the climate modeling and comprehensive planning also. So by integrating the data on heat, precipitation, and extreme event, this report provide a roadmap and evidence based on the decision making that prioritize our like public safety, environmental health, and long-term sustainability. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Sanjita. Great. Very good presentation. Thank you.
If you
Kayla,
have any question, you are welcome after this.
we'll spare a few minutes in the end for some questions. I know our students are very passionate about what they did. It's a great project that they've been working, and they are willing to share all the great things that they have been doing. I know Kayla, she did a good rehearsal before in the beginning, so she's gonna make it short and sweet, right?
Very.
That's right. Elevator speech, whatever they call it. So make it in 12 minutes if you can,
Oh, yeah,
right?
I can.
Okay, you can. I'm sure she can. Although she had a good story to say.
Okay, hello, my name is Kayla Stamps, and I will be presenting the National Climate Assessment of Counties across the Southern United States. The impact of global warming changes of 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Celsius, and 4 degrees Celsius. So changes in global warming. The rise of global warming has led to unprecedented changes in climate patterns, resulting in more frequent and severe weather events worldwide. So the objective of my study is to evaluate the projected changes of 4 global warming levels and the impacts they have on the following selected counties. It's also to formulate mitigation and adaptation methods that would combat the impacts of each level, as well as form suggestive policies that will ensure the safe measures of sustaining these methods, and then compare the data of all 3 counties and evaluate how it serves as a national climate assessment guide for the Southern United States. So the 3 counties I chose were in the states of Texas, Mississippi, and Florida, which is Waller County, Texas, Hinds County, Mississippi, and then Orange County, Florida. So I chose these counties because they each have unique climate zones, from arid plains to humid subtropical and tropical climates. And then comparing these projections help understand regional specific vulnerabilities, as well as each state having different levels of economic development and infrastructure resilience. They also experience similar natural disasters such as flooding, hurricanes, droughts, and heat waves, which may impact these states differently. And importantly, these southern states like Texas, Mississippi, and Florida are major agricultural producers with crops like cotton, corn, and citrus fruit. So here's a little background information of the 3 counties. So for Waller County, it's located in southeast Texas with a population of 63,553 as of 2023. The cost of living is 20% lower than the national average, and the major production is cattle, rice, and corn. For Hinds County, it's located in central Mississippi with a population of 214,870 as of 2023, with a cost of living low of 23% lower than the national average. And then their major production is cotton, soybean, cattle, and poultry. And then for Orange County, is located in Central Florida with a population of 1.471 million as of 2023. The cost of living is 5% higher than the national average. And then their major production is citrus fruit. So for my first county, I chose Waller County, Texas, right here. And here's a bigger picture. So for the change in average precipitation for each global warming level, for 1.5, you can see it's very dry right here. But for the 2 degrees Celsius, it gets a little more precipitation, as well as the 3 degrees and then the 4 degrees Celsius right here. So for my tables, this shows the change in precipitation. The orange showing the days with extreme precipitation, red extreme precipitation amount, and then the burgundy of annual precipitation change. So for annual precipitation for 1.5 is projected to decrease by 2%, 2 degrees Celsius decreasing by 2%, 3 degrees, 1%, and then 4 degrees showing no change compared to the 1991 to 2000 control setting. And then here shows the changes in wettest day metrics. Green showing the wettest day of the year, and then purple wettest day in 5 years. And then for the wettest day of the year, it's projected to increase by 1% in the 1.5 degrees Celsius, 4% followed by 7% and then 9%. So some adaptation methods for these impacts could be to upgrade stormwater systems, encourage practices that increase soil absorption and reduce erosion, as well as encouraging building designs that withstand flooding and heavy rainfall. And then for mitigation methods to prevent this, we could lower CO2 emissions by supporting regional transitions to renewable energy, and then also promoting energy efficient buildings and industries. Here shows the change in average annual temperature for Waller County. As you can see, it's pretty much the same across the board for all 4 global warming levels, which is not too hot in this range right here.
Yep.
So here's the data that I've collected. For the temperature change metrics, this shows the average annual temperature, summer mean temperature, lowest summer temperature, and then the hottest day. So for the average annual temperature, is projected to increase by 2 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Fahrenheit for 1.5 degrees Celsius, followed by 3 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees, and then 6. Here shows the change in extreme hot days, showing days over 95, 100, and 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And then for our hottest days, it's projected to increase by 2 degrees Fahrenheit. For the next projection, 3, 5, and then 7. And then for the hot nights and then cold days, as you can see, the nights are going to get hotter as the global warming levels increase, and then we're going to have less cold days. And then to adapt to this change, we could, expand green infrastructure, create cooling centers and heat warming systems, as well as promote high efficiency HVAC systems. And then to mitigate these, we could lower CO2 emissions by electrifying transportation, as well as incorporate climate data into building codes and land use regulations. My next county is Hinds County in Mississippi, located right here. Here's a bigger picture. And then for the change in annual precipitation, it's gonna be dry across the board, as you can see. So the change in annual precipitation, here are the metrics that show the change in days of with extreme precipitation, change in extreme precipitation, and then change in annual precipitation. So for the annual precipitation, it'll increase by 0%, so no change based on the baseline for 1.5 degrees Celsius. It'll increase by 2 degrees. Increase by 2% for the 2 degrees Celsius. Increase by 2% for the 3 degrees Celsius, and then increase by 6% in the 4 degrees Celsius. So it's going to be a high jump between 3 and 4. And then for the wettest days in Hinds County, as you can see, it's going to increase by 1%, 7, 9, and then jump to 12. For adaptation and mitigation methods, we could expand capacity of storm drains and retention basins, as well as create early warning and emergency responses to the flood predictions. And then for mitigation, we could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by promoting solar and wind installations, as well as support regenerative agriculture. Here are the changes in average annual temperature. The temperature for each projection will actually decrease in for the annual temperature is going to increase by 2 degrees Fahrenheit, increase by 3, 5, and then 7. So this is pretty gradual, not too not that big of a jump. And then for the extreme hot days, it'll increase by 2, 3, 6, and 7. And then for our hot nights and cold days, the hot nights are going to increase, and then we're going to have less colder days. And the adaptation methods for this, similarly, we could prepare for heat wave response plans, promote energy efficient HVAC systems, as well as support farmers with heat and drought tolerant crops. And then for mitigation methods, again, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by promoting electric vehicles, promote urban and rural tree planting, as well as expanding recycling and compost programs. For my last county, I chose Orange County, Florida, right here. So the change in annual precipitation, as you can see, is going to actually have more precipitation as the global warming levels increase. So for the annual precipitation, it's going to increase by 1%. Then it's going to not have any effect by 3 degrees Celsius. It'll increase by 1 and then jump to 5% increase by the 4 degrees Celsius projection. And then for changes in wettest days, it's going to increase by 5%, 4%, then jump to 12 and then 10. So it's going to have more rainfall in those wettest days. So to combat this, and this is different from the other counties because it's going to have more rainfall, which will have the need to invest in green stormwater infrastructures. And then we need to restore and protect wetlands to manage the overflow and recharge groundwater. And then mitigation methods, reduce CO2 emissions by using renewable energy, as well as promoting regenerative agriculture and native landscaping. Here are the changes in average annual temperature. It's going to be pretty similar across the board for each global warming level. And then for annual temperature change, it'll increase by 1 degree Fahrenheit, 2, 4, and 5. So it's not that big of a jump, as well as 2, 3, 5, and 6 for the extreme hot days. And then the nights will get hotter, and we're going to have not that many less cold days. And to adapt to this, we could mandate reflective materials and building codes to reduce urban heat island effects, as well as train healthcare workers and develop community outreach targeting at-risk populations like children and the elderly. And then for mitigation methods, again, reducing CO2 emissions by promoting electric vehicles, as well as promoting mixed-use walkable communities to reduce car reliance, especially in a high population area like this. So here is a side-by-side comparison of all three counties for temperature. So as you can see, for the 4 degrees Celsius, Hinds County takes the lead with extreme precipitation. For extreme precipitation amount, again, Hinds County will have more precipitation. And then the annual precipitation change, Hinds County takes the lead. While Waller County have less precipitation, so they're going to experience drought. And then for the wettest days of the year, as you can see, Orange County and Hinds County will both have wetter days than have more precipitation on the wettest day of the year than Waller County. And then for the 5 years, Orange County will have a lot of precipitation. So here's the comparison interpretation that we just went over. And here's the county comparison for temperature. So as you can see, Hinds County is going to have a higher temperature than Waller County and then Orange County. Hottest day, Hinds County take the lead, followed by Waller and then Orange. And then increase in days of higher than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, Waller County will take the lead, then Hinds County, and then Orange County. And then for increased nights, Hinds County will take the lead compared to Waller County and Orange County. Here's the comparison interpretation that we went over. And then for our conclusion, the climate projection data across Waller County, Hinds County, and Orange County reveals a consistent and alarming trend. All three counties are projected to experience significant warming and heat-related extremes as global warming levels increase. However, the magnitude of impact varies despite their shared location in the U.S. southern region. So as you can see, Hinds County shows the strongest signal of climate intensification. Orange County shows moderate but volatile responses, but Waller County shows inconsistent trends, but also have potential stabilization. So for my overall implications, despite their shared southern regional classification, the three counties display divergent climate trajectories due to the differences in geography, their proximity to the Gulf of Mexico, elevation, and then storm exposure. This reinforces that regional climate assessments must be downscaled. State or national averages mask local vulnerabilities, and policy and infrastructure planning must be tailored to each location's specific risk profile rather than having a generalized assumption of the South.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Bagya is going to walk us through her work as well in 10 minutes, and we will be on time. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent job. I like the tri-state comparison. So it looks like the SEC here.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Bhagya Degal. I'm a graduate student in Natural Resources and Environmental Sciences. Today, I'm going to present, as you know, National Climate Assessment, specifically to Texas and 3 counties. I selected Harris County, Dallas, and Bexar counties. As Dr. Anup explained, this is like the things related to the National Climate Assessment. And we use the global warming levels, these 4 levels for our analysis. I selected these 3 counties because these 3 counties broadly represent that climate challenges faced by Texas, specifically the coastal verification and urban heat, and also water stress. This Harris County, this highly vulnerable to rising sea levels, coastal storms, and extreme heat, and also this the chemical industry contributes to air pollution, further impacting health and climate resilience. And this Dallas County experienced the impacts of rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and potential water shortage. And also this county infrastructure and urban development face significant challenges from climate change. And this third county, Bexar County, is affected by the high drought risk and vulnerable to shortage of water. And this county's urban areas and agricultural sectors face challenges from declining water resources and increasing temperature. And these are the specific details for each counties. For the Harris, this is located in southern East Texas, and this is the area for this Harris County, and population is for 108 millions, and specifically these three counties, mostly the urban areas, and Dallas also located in north central Texas, Bexar located in south central Texas. So these three counties, mostly urban areas and mostly industrial things happening in these each counties. And as you see, this is the counties located in Texas. I selected these three counties. It's like triangles making triangle, and it's like covering all the climate challenges face this, especially the Texas. And I'm going to describe first Harris County. And here I included change in precipitation for this Harris County. In this graph, you can see I included a percent change for annual precipitation, change in days with extreme precipitation, and change in extreme precipitation. So here you can see for the overall annual precipitation slightly decreased for with the for each these global warming levels, and for the days with extreme precipitation and change in extreme precipitation is increasing with the global warming level. So for this one, for the mitigate for these things, we need to relocate critical infrastructure and implement the water conservation and management strategies, and improve the access to adaptation resources for vulnerable communities, and move beyond incremental changes to systematic adaptations. And here I included changes in wettest days. This graph, you can see this green color is showing the wettest days in 5 years, and this ash color bars showing the wettest days in of the within the year. So as you can see here also, it's increasing with the global warming level, and wettest day in 5 years increased between 1.5 centigrades to 2 centigrades warming, and relatively stable at around 6% increase from 2% to 4% global warming level. And the wettest day of the year, this gray color shows that higher spike for 4 centigrade global warming level. So specifically the impacts will come from these changes is increase in the flooding. And as you know that this hurricane Harvey happened in 2017, so maybe that level of flooding can happen from this, and increment from 5% to 8% at 4 centigrade global warming level. This is catastrophic flooding for vulnerable communities. To adapt and mitigate these impacts, we have to relocate critical infrastructure for both 5 years and annual extreme events, and implement resilience actions, and design water management for 6% increase in extreme events with enhanced storage capacity. And here I included the changes in temperature, and here I included change in average annual temperature, change in mean summer temperature, change in the hottest day of the year, change in the lowest average temperature of the summer. Here you can see most of these values are same for each global warming level, and it's increasing with these levels because mostly this temperature is showing same parameters. So actually, specifically the nighttime summer temperature begin to increase more rapidly than other metrics. And this can impact the worst heat risk, and also warmer summer nights particularly harm low-income vulnerable households lacking cooling. And for mitigate and adapt for these risks and these impacts, we need to establish resilience officer and a Houston Resilience Climate Action Plan, and need to enhance surveillance for heat-related illness and health impacts, and implement cooling centers, urban greenery, climate-smart building codes, and early warning systems.
Can you go to the comparison
Oh.
so that we can save time?
Oh.
And you'll have time for the report, but if you don't mind, because we're running out of time. If you can go to the comparison, please. I mean, we are developing reports based on this one, so they will have,
Here,
yes.
specifically note down like
Yes, yes, that's a good idea.
yeah.
Good there, please.
for each counties,
uh-huh.
for the recommendations for each counties. For the Harris counties, enhance the flood infrastructure. This will expand the maintain green stormwater infrastructure such as road restoration, retention basin, and permeable surfaces, and prioritize nature-based solution to reduce flood risk in underserved communities, and also industrial and energy sector resilience, harden critical infrastructure, and strengthen regulation for chemical storage and emissions during storms, and also the community health and equity. And for the Dallas County, expand the tree canopy, green roofs, and reflective building materials to reduce the heat effect, and prioritizing greening in low-income and high-heat neighborhood, and also encourage emergency planning and disaster education initiatives. For Bexar County, we can, from the protect against extreme heat, we can establish heat early warning system, and public buildings as cooling shelters, and also support urban and peri-urban agriculture to promote climate smart farming practices, and provide technical assistance and financial support for smallholders, and community health and equity, and also invest in water conservation. From this
Overall.
Actually, this all counties will affect from these extreme events, and specifically the Harris County face more risk due to the flooding and heat, but for the extreme precipitation, Dallas is showing the most extreme precipitation changes due to urban heat. So yeah, this is the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Bagia. You did an excellent job, and I really appreciate our students for what they did. They did a fantastic job, as you have seen. And what you can see, the creativity of each student. Each student had his or her own impact on the presentation and how to interpret. So I think the next step is for us to go for the report, right? So that's it. And I think we have a couple of minutes until we are preparing for the next talk. So in the meantime, if you have any suggestion for our outstanding students, please, the floor is yours. Yes, Dr. Mamani.
Please tell me how the county lines were generated. How did they decide this county is here, this county is here, this county's borders are here? Two sentences. Go ahead, please. I'm so curious. I have another question.
Sure.
How counties were mapped? Yes, how did they determine the country?
The maps are here, and they put that map in the system, the apps that called RDS. So that apps create the map. So that map is in only mobile phone. It's a similar map that we have in the program.
Okay,
Let's get the
got,
And selecting each county and differentiate each county,
I see.
The online, and we are just creating ourselves.
I got that. Kayla, go ahead. How were they generated? How did they determine this count is in this line like this? Oh, that's good, but that's how you did it. But I'm curious how the US government, the state of Texas determined the borders of the county. This is something you can think about it because, and I'm also curious where those measurements are taken. You showed as if it was 100% covered. I live in Cyprus. I drive a mile away, no rain. So from the way you showed, it looks like it was very homogeneous best case. What my concerns are, Sanjita mentioned the ecological characteristics. I kind of like that aspect, but I'm curious so much about how those counties were originally determined to be lined and how the measurements are made. Are they covering the entire county, which is probably not the case. But anyways, just my comments, and I kudos to you and your advisors.
Thank you, Dean Memoli. I think the resolution of the projection is at the county level. So the projection at the county level. So anything, everything at the county will be the constant because that's the projection. We can do more downscaling, but we need supercomputers and lots of time so that we can download it to another higher resolution. But the NCA 5 is based on that CMP1 projection, and those projections are at the county level. Yes. Let's thank our students for the outstanding job. They did very, very good job, and we appreciate your effort. Almost. So
Okay,
right now, we're waiting for the report to send it to the county judges, right? Almost there. Yes. So we're preparing for a seminar. We're gonna start in a couple of minutes. I would like to welcome our visitors here. Dr. Krishna Maswamy, if you don't know him, he's here. By the way, his office is sponsoring the lunch, so I have to be nice to him.
All of you should be nice to me.
And by the way, for those of you who didn't see our book that we launched on Friday, this is the copy. Pass it around, take a look at it, please. Yes. There is a signing sheet. Yes, there is a signing sheet. Please make sure to sign in. We appreciate it. How are you doing? After this one. You're a good student.
I don't want to learn.
Is the temperature okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I grew up in Texas, so
Hey, yeah, you're a historian.
I'm used to it, so I'm used to it. Used to being hot.
Which area of Houston?
Meyerland.
Oh, okay.
77096.
That's right.
So where do most faculty live? Do you live like in Katy or do you live
Cyprus,
around
most of them.
Cyprus? Okay.
Although some live in College Station.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's not too bad a drive.
No, it's not.
It's a little bit long, but the
Yeah.
traffic, not a lot of traffic.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Yes, yes, take your time.
I won't.
Good morning and welcome to the Land Grant Seminar Series 2025 spring semester. Can you believe it? It's the last semester, last presentation of the semester for the seminar series. You made it. So we're very pleased that we had a successful semester where we were pleased to have several presenters. As you can see here, these are the people who presented during the semester. So they are students, they are faculties, they are administrators from our campus, from College Station, from UT Austin. So we had a variety of speakers, and we appreciate their time and contribution to the success of this college-wide seminar series. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you my colleague, Professor Andrew Dessler. Dr. Dessler is a climate scientist who studied both the science and politics of climate change. He is a professor of atmospheric science and the director of Texas A&M Center for Climate Studies. His scientific research evolved around climate feedbacks, in particular how water vapor and clouds act to amplify warming from the carbon dioxide that humans emit. He is also interested in the intersection of climate change and human society, with the goal of helping us better cope with the impact of climate change. This includes work quantifying climate extremes and how climate change can alter them, as well as analyzing how climate change will stress crucial energy, water, and other infrastructure and human systems. During the last year of Clinton administration, he served as a senior political analyst in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Based on his research and policy experience, he has authored 2 books on climate change: The Science of and Politics of Climate Change, a guide to the debate in 2019, and Introduction to Modern Climate Change in 2021. The latter book won the 2014 American Meteorologists Society Lewis Batten Authors Award. Prior to his work on climate, his research focused on stratospheric photochemistry. He authored the book, The Chemistry and Physics of Stratospheric Ozone 2000, which is about his work on that subject. These are copies of his books, front pages at least. In 2011, in recognition of his work on outreach, he was named Google Science Communication Fellow. In 2021, he won the American Geophysical Union Climate Communication Award. He is a fellow of the American Association of Advancement of Science and the American Geophysical Union. From 2012 to 2015, he was chair of the AAAS section of atmospheric and hydrospheric science. He is currently president of the AGU Global Environmental Change section. He served for 7 years as a member of NASA's Earth Science Advisory Committee and twice served on NASA's Senior Review Operation Mission. His educational background, he has a BA in physics from Rice University. By the way, he's a Houstonian. He was born and lived here. And PhD in chemistry from Harvard. He's also postdoctoral at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center and spent 9 years on the research faculty of University of Maryland. Prior to graduate school, he worked on the Energy Group, the first Boston corporation doing mergers and acquisitions analysis. With that, I welcome Dr. Dessler. He's going to talk to us about the climate brink, disaster or salvation. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for that very kind and very comprehensive introduction. So it's really a pleasure to be here. I've lived almost my 40 of my 60 years. I've lived in Houston or College Station. I've never been to Prairie View A&M before, so it's taken me a long time to be here, but I'm really glad to visit. There was a title here, but when I converted to PDF, it disappeared. Talk about the climate brink, and you'll understand what I mean about that in a minute. All right, so this is really the only climate plot I'm going to show you. I call this the scariest plot in the world. Okay, so let's think about this. This is 30,000 years of global average temperature. So it goes back 20,000 years and forward 10,000 years. So we are here. And you might be saying, wow, what the hell is going on right here? That's weird. Well, it turns out that's the fossil fuel era. Now, I want people to understand the fossil fuel era is going to be but a brief spark in the history of humanity. It's going to last a couple hundred years. So we've had it for maybe 150 years. Maybe it'll go another 50 years. Maybe it'll go another 100 years. But it's going to be a really short period in humanity's history. And we're living in the middle of it. So in some sense, we're incredibly lucky that we happen to be living at this time in the middle of this really weird period. Now, as you can see, fossil fuels are great. They run our life, but they also do something weird to the climate. You can see what's going on. That is a result of fossil fuels. And if you say, what are we going to do? What we call business as usual, meaning kind of like if we kind of keep doing what we're doing now, we'll get about 3 degrees Celsius of warming, about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it is easy to look at that and say, who cares? 3 degrees Celsius, that's not going to have any impact on my life. Winter is 50 degrees Celsius colder than summer, and day night can be 10 or 20 degrees Celsius difference, and 1 week to the next can be extremely large differences. But those are the local temperatures, okay? What we're looking at here is the global average temperature. And the global average temperature is quite stable. What seem to be very small changes in the global average temperature correspond to very large changes in what the world looks like. So let me give you an example. This is 5 degrees of difference. Does anybody know what we would call this period about 17,000 years ago?
Ice age?
Yeah, last glacial maximum. So that was the depth of the last ice age was here. And here's the interglacial, the hot, sort of the very warm period that we're living in now. So 5 degrees Celsius, about 10 degrees Fahrenheit, is the difference between an ice age and the very pleasant world we're living in. Ice age is a completely different planet. If you walk out the door here into an ice age, you wouldn't recognize the place. I mean, there were thousands of feet of ice over Boston and New York, glaciers covering much of North America. Sea level 300 feet lower. It was a different world, different assemblages of plants and animals. And so this means when you look at this, when you look at this is 60% of an ice age. All right, this is an enormous amount of warming. 3 degrees Celsius is going to reconfigure the surface of the planet because it is so large. Now, we are here at about 1.3 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial. And again, it's easy to say, who cares? But realize this is a quarter of an ice age, give or take, of 20% of an ice age. So this is an enormous amount of warming. And this is why, when you look at the news, as the kids would say, shit's getting real. I hope Doesn't sound terrible coming from someone as old as me. But the point is we see things happening, okay? We see things, yeah? Sure. So it was basically a combination of changes in the orbital so the ice ages are paced by the orbital parameters of the Earth. So the obliquity, the tilt, the eccentricity, how elliptical the orbit is, and then the precession of the equinoxes. So that's what paces, that's what sets the timing of the ice ages. And then that starts this complicated sort of Rube Goldberg machine where, for example, we know that carbon dioxide, the initial warming from the orbital changes then changes the amount of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide acts as a feedback to amplify that. So it's this sort of complicated system where you get some warming from the changes in the orbit, that then starts to melt the ice, that changes the albedo of the planet, CO2 comes out, that changes the warming potential of the atmosphere, and then you get these really big changes in the climate. Anyway, so we've already warmed the climate 20%, and we're seeing things, okay? We're seeing things that are astonishing in the climate system. Now, let me talk about the way people think about climate impacts. So here's sort of a cartoon, and I have just rainfall intensity here, and I have sort of damage. And so, you have no rainfall, you have no damage. That should make sense. No damage from rainfall. You have Hurricane Harvey, you have a lot of damage. All right. Now, when people look at this, the human brain does a really good job. It'll draw a straight line through here. Okay, so this is what I call linear thinking. And again, everybody is good at linear thinking. But unfortunately, the problem is not really linear. If we actually say, what does the damage curve look like for rainfall? It actually looks like this. So with no rain, there's no damage. And as the rain gets heavier and heavier, there's no damage because we have existing infrastructure that can handle the rain. And then you reach some threshold. You reach some threshold where you overwhelm the infrastructure, and then the damages rise very abruptly. So the system is strongly non-linear. So you have no damage at first, and then when the damages hit, they hit very quickly. And we can see non-linearity built everywhere in the world around us. If you look around at infrastructure, you can see thresholds built into those. So here's one example. You're driving across a bridge. You've probably seen this. People have seen this. You're driving here is kathunk, kathunk as your car drives across this. So this is an expansion joint. So bridges, like everything else in the world, have to expand and contract when the temperature changes. And so the engineers, when they built the bridge, let's say this bridge was built in 1970, they said, okay, what's the temperature range that this bridge is going to be in? And they take some book off the wall, they have some climatology, they say, okay, the hottest temperature it's ever going to be is this, and this is how long it's going to last that temperature. And so we need to build this much expansion into the bridge. They don't want to overbuild it because they want to keep the price down. So they add a little safety margin, but not much. And what's happening now is the assumptions that are built into this expansion joint are no longer true. I mean, in the presentations we just saw, lots and lots of evidence that extreme heat is getting worse. And as extreme heat gets worse, that means that these assumptions, how big this is not true. And what happens is the joint closes and the bridge is damaged. It will damage the bridge if this joint closes because it can't expand. It starts bending metal and cracking concrete. So this is a real serious problem. And there are millions of places that this is. These are train tracks. So train tracks also expand and contract. There are expansion joints in train tracks. And when it gets too hot, the expansion joints close and you get what they call sun kinks. That's what this is. And that will derail a train. Here's cement in the Pacific Northwest in 2021. Again, cement expands when it gets hot. They build expansion joints into roads. If it gets too hot, it buckles. And so there are millions of these things built into our society. And it is going to be very expensive for us to go through all of these things and fix them. Let me give you one example from Houston. I grew up in Houston. And this is a house that's actually very close to where I grew up in Meyerland. Anyone? Meyerland? No. Meyerland? What? Meyerland, not
Meyerland.
Maryland. No, Meyerland. Meyerland it's in Southwest Houston, Southeast Houston. Sorry. Anyway, this is a beautiful house. Almost 5,000 square feet. You can tell it has a copper chimney, so it was designed by an architect. No home builder would ever do that for a spec home. I mean, really very nice. But you'll notice that this house actually flooded twice. Flooded in 2015, didn't flood in 2016, flooded in Harvey in 2017. And so let's look at what happened to this house, okay? Oops. All right, so you can get the assessed tax value of this house off Zillow. So this is year on this axis. Here's the tax value in thousands of dollars. And so if you go from 2000, the house is worth about $400,000. It's a pretty nice house, 5,000 square feet in a nice neighborhood with good schools. And the price went up. And then we had the Great Recession, price went down. And then in the 2010s, the price started going up. And you could really imagine these people think, who cares about climate change? We've got this expensive house. We're going to sell it when we retire. We're going to pay for the kids to go to college. We're going to go on a cruise. We're going to buy a condo in Florida. You know, we're set because we have this asset that's worth so much money. Yeah, who cares about climate change? And that's basically what happened. Okay, so these people own this house. It was worth $700,000. 3 years later, the house was worth $250,000. They lost $500,000. And the important thing to understand here is this is the nonlinear nature of climate change. It wasn't the fact that climate change damages accumulated slowly over many years until they became large. It was they were zero, and then within a few years, they were $500,000 poorer. I mean, that no longer can they afford to retire early. They can't go on a cruise. They can't pay for their kids' college funds. And this is not the nonlinearity of climate change. Now, what this means is there are people out there, hopefully not you guys, who think, I don't care about climate change. You know, maybe it's a concern. You know, people who are concerned about climate change, it'll affect me, or it'll affect my kids, or, you know, it's a 2050 problem. It's a next generation problem, and they're going to get wiped out tomorrow. Again, hopefully it's not none of you, but it's somebody. There's some people out there who are going to get wiped out by climate, who are fine today. They're going to get wiped out tomorrow because of the nonlinear nature of the problem. You know, there are lots of examples of this. Hurricane Sandy, lots of good examples about the water going into the subway system. If the water stops 1 inch below the subway entrance, there's no damage. Water rises 1 inch above the entrance of the subway, you have billions of dollars of damage. And again, this is the problem here. Water stops 1 inch below the entrance to your house, no damage. 1 inch above the entrance to your house, tens of thousands of dollars of damage. And the question everybody should ask yourself is this you? Are you the person right here who's saying, oh, this is not going to be a big deal. Maybe it'll be a problem in a few decades, but I'm fine now, because you may not be. All right, now let's talk about sort of how these impacts are going to manifest themselves and what we can do about it. So one thing we can do about it is we can just say, well, let's just deal with it. Let's just learn to live with climate change. People call adaptation. So if you're in the climate world, you hear people talk about adaptation a lot. And adaptation is going to be very expensive. So one thing, for example, you can do is you can say, well, I'm worried about this, so I'm just going to get more insurance, or I'm going to keep up my insurance. And insurance is getting progressively more expensive because of the impacts of climate change. It's getting more and more expensive because the risk is going up. And we see two examples in California and in Florida that it's getting very hard for people to get insurance. And once you can't get insurance, again, the entire economy grinds to a halt, because if you can't get insurance, you can't sell your house, because you can't get a mortgage without insurance. If you don't own property, you don't know this, but in order for you to get a mortgage, you have to insure your house for good reason. So if there's no homeowners insurance in an area, nobody can sell their house unless the person coming in is going to pay cash. And there are people that can do that, but not a lot. So what else can we do to deal with climate change? Well, we could spend a lot of money dealing with it, or we can just essentially blame the victims. So let me give you one example. So this is Texas prisoners. So 70% of prisoners in Texas don't have access to air conditioning. And you think about that. You're in this brick building or concrete building. It's 110 outside. You know, what do? You can't install air conditioning. You don't have no power. There's nobody who is more vulnerable with less power than prisoners. Now, the Texas legislature considered a bill to air condition the prisons, and they didn't pass because they said it'd be too expensive. And so what is the rhetoric that we see about this? Well, we basically normalize suffering. This is the future of adaptation. Instead of saying, let's spend the money to fix this, what we do is we say, these people are getting what they deserve. They're criminals. It's like, if you can't stand the heat, don't do the crime. What do these people think? They think prison was the Ritz? No. This is what they get. This is what they deserve. And this is the future of adaptation. As things go south with climate change, don't look for people to help you. Look for people to explain why it's your fault that you're suffering. Let me give you another example. Exact sort of in the same vein. So this is in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. They actually passed a law which said all work performed directly under the sun in open places shall not be allowed between 12:30 and 3 during the summer. So this is adaptation. This is what adaptation actually looks like. It's too hot. People can't work outside. Okay. So what's going on in Texas? Well, so in 2010, City of Austin passes a mandatory employee rest break ordinance. This is actually it was not a very stringent ordinance. Employers had to give employees a rest break of 10 minutes every 4 hours. I mean, that's not a very big, that is not, you wouldn't say you're pampering these employees. And so, what of course did the state do? Well, the state actually passed a law that prohibited cities from mandating water breaks. And you might say, well, it's because the state wanted to mandate them, so they hadn't. But of course, the state didn't do that. They just said, you can't do it. We're not going to do it, and you cannot do it. And again, the cruelty is the point here. It turns out that making poor minority people suffer is good politics in Texas and in a lot of places. And so, there are a lot of people that look at this and say, yeah, those workers shouldn't. A lot of them are illegal. This is what you hear. A lot of them are illegals. If they don't like this, they should go to school, get a better job so they can work indoors like me. That's what you hear. It's normalizing their suffering. It's not actually adapting to climate change. So adaptation is really a road to ruin. And that's kind of where we are now. But there's really two brinks here. So I gave you the bad brink. This is the brink that's not good, the brink sort of progressively worse outcomes. But there's another brink this way, which we're also on the brink of. And it's really our choice which of these roads we want to go down. The other brink is what people would refer to as mitigation. So instead of adapting to climate change, you basically stop the climate from changing. You try to stabilize the climate. And we are now in a position where we can actually do this. So for up until a few years ago, people talked about switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and it really wasn't economically possible. It would have been expensive, but that's not true now. And in fact, before I say that, so this is based on basically two assumptions. The first one, this is something that a lot of people don't know, so I always like to make this, is that once we stop emitting fossil fuels, once we stop emitting greenhouse gases, the climate will stop warming. Okay, so this is something that the scientific community has really only realized in the last decade. There's not a lot of committed warming in the system. It's not like we're going to stop and it's going to keep warming because of some kind of inertia, like you hit the brakes and your car slides down the highway. That's not the way the climate system operates. When we hit the brakes and we stop emitting greenhouse gases, the climate will stop warming. In addition, as I said, we already have the technology to largely do this at reasonable cost. So let me just show you two plots about energy costs. So this is solar energy. So this is year 2009, 2021. This is the price in dollars per megawatt hour. And you can see that's really astonishing. 90% drop in the cost of solar energy from 2009 to 2021. I mean, astonishing. Nobody predicted it. Yeah. But solar energy is now the cheapest energy probably in the history of humanity. Here's a similar plot for wind. So this energy is cheap, is much cheaper than any other energy we have. Now I show this to people and they all say, I don't believe that. And I say, let's look at the data. Okay, let's look at what energy developers are actually deploying. So this is a plot. So ERCOT, they run, if you don't know who ERCOT is, they run the Texas Grid and Electricity Reliability Council of Texas, and they publish statistics on what kind of power people want to hook up to the grid, what they say in the interconnection queue. And so this is gigawatts in the queue, and this is different fuel types. And this is what people want to hook up. So you see it's solar and batteries are 85% of the power. And again, the people doing this are not green bean hippies wearing Birkenstocks and driving around in a VW microbus. They are energy guys that drive F-150 pickups, and they realize that this is the way you make money. Solar energy is the cheapest power makes you the most money. And solar is the cheapest power right now. Wind, for various reasons, is quite low. That's mainly due to transmission problems. And natural gas. Natural gas is no longer cheap energy. It was cheap energy 10 years ago. It's no longer cheap energy. And as a result, nobody wants to build natural gas. And so this is the market. This is what the market is telling us. Now, we also know, I like to say this, this is a meme of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. I can't remember what her name is. Mary Jane from Spider-Man. And it's like she's saying, tell me the truth. I'm ready to hear it. And then Spider-Man says, everyone already knows renewables are intermittent. And she bursts into tears. So you know, when I tell people this, they'll then come back and go, you know, the sun goes down at night, smart guy. What are you going to do then? So let me take a few minutes to explain how we build a grid that runs on intermittent renewable energy that still provides reliable power for us. All right, so first let me define two terms I'm going to use. So the first one is what we call nameplate capacity. So this is how much power a wind turbine or a solar panel generates under optimal conditions. So if you have a wind turbine, it might be a 6 megawatt wind turbine, but it only makes 6 megawatts at 8 meters per second of wind speed. I'm making these numbers up, but there's one optimal wind speed where it produces that amount of power. But if the wind's blowing not as hard or harder, it's not going to be making that optimal amount. The capacity factor is the ratio of the actual output to the nameplate capacity. And it varies over time. Nameplate capacity is fixed. When you install a solar panel or wind turbine, that has some nameplate capacity. And then as the wind goes up and down, the capacity factor goes up and down with it. So sometimes it's generating 100%, sometimes it's generating 5% of that. So these are the two terms we're going to use. And so let's imagine a thought experiment, which is, oh, well, before we do that. So this is what the capacity factor for wind, for a hypothetical grid of wind covering the US would look like. All right, so you can see a couple things. You see a lot of very short-term variability, day-to-day variability. You know, you walk outside, wind blows hard, 2 minutes later, it's not blowing that hard. You also see a big seasonal cycle. Wind does the worst in the summer. It does really well in the fall and the spring. It does pretty well in the winter. So the other seasons it does better, but the summer is the worst time for wind in the US. All right, now, hypothetical experiment. We want to assume, let's assume we need to supply 100 megawatts to a city at all times. Actually, I think Texas A&M pulls about 100 megawatts, so, or a large college campus. But whatever it is, this is what we want. And let's ask the question, can we do this with this wind grid? Let's ask people, do you think, anybody think we can generate 100 megawatts at all times with wind? All right, the answer is you can if you overbuild. So what this means is you look at this point here. This is your minimum capacity factor. It never goes to zero because the wind, if you have a grid covering the US, there's always wind somewhere. This minimum capacity factor means that on this hour, I think it's September 9th at like 5 p.m. in this data set, you hit the minimum capacity factor of 5.5%. If you want to generate 100 megawatts, you need to build 1,800 megawatts of nameplate capacity. If you do that, and it generates 5.5% capacity factor, you get 100 megawatts. So the short answer is you can do it, but you have to build a lot of wind. And now this approach turns out to be very inefficient. Or before let me explain, before I talk about why it's inefficient, let me give you some numbers here. So natural gas is what we're going to compare to. We're going to compare to a grid that 100 megawatts of natural gas, you build 100 megawatts, you just run them all the time. So your natural gas plants are always producing 100 megawatts. That turns out to be about $60 a megawatt hour. Or you can build 1,800 megawatts of wind, and that is $231 megawatt hour. So you can do it. You can run our city on wind. I should say wind energy, not renewable energy. On wind energy, it's just expensive. So don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. You can do it, but it's just going to be very expensive because you've got to overbuild so much to account for the 1 hour where the wind's not blowing very much. Now, this is the reason the reason this is so expensive. I told you earlier, wind and solar are so cheap. They are cheap, but the reason this is expensive is because you're overbuilding. And if we look at this is a probability distribution. This is the amount of power you're generating in an hour. This is hourly data, and this is a probability. Don't worry about that. This red dashed line shows you what we need to generate. We need to generate 100 megawatts, and this shows you what the distribution is. And what you'll notice is that on average, you're generating 600 megawatts of wind, and you're throwing away 500 of the 600 megawatts because you only need 100 megawatts. Okay, so you're throwing away 83% of your power. There's sometimes you're curtailing a gigawatt of power, more than 10 times the power you need. You're wasting it. And you're doing that all because there's 1 hour over here where you're only generating 100 megawatts. And you have to size your grid for that 1 hour. And so this is very inefficient. Now, what about wind and solar? Okay, now you're cooking, because if you remember, I showed you the seasonal cycle earlier, and it showed you that the wind does the worst in the summer. That's when solar does the best. Solar in Texas cranks in the summer. And so by combining these, wind and solar have a higher minimum capacity factor than wind. And so here's the grid. It's 1,143 megawatts of wind and 164 megawatts of solar. I just say, by the way, this is done through a model that calculates the minimum cost, which is why these numbers are not round. I think I may have rounded that number. I doubt it's exactly 1,800. But basically now we've cut the price a lot. Now $152. Now it's only 2.5 times as expensive as natural gas. So we're heading in the right direction. We do that again by adding diversity to our grid. All right, but this is probably still too expensive. We still want to get cheaper power than that. And so what we need to do is we need dispatchable power. So the thing about wind and solar is you get it when you get it. You can't turn it on and off. And you can't say, oh, I need more power now, I'm going to turn it up. There's some amount that's available, and that's all you get. Dispatchable power is power that can be turned on and off at will. So natural gas is dispatchable power. You can turn your plant on or off or up or down. Hydroelectric is dispatchable power. You can send water through the turbines or not. So let's talk about a grid that's wind, solar, and natural gas. Okay, so we're going to use some fossil fuels in this grid. And the optimal grid is 182 megawatts of wind, 130 megawatts of solar, and 83 megawatts of natural gas. All right, so let's look at how this grid actually operates. So the first thing to understand is when the wind and the solar are blowing, you're going to be using those energy sources because they're basically free. Once you build them, the marginal cost is zero or approximately zero. Natural gas is more expensive to run because for every kilowatt hour of natural gas, you have to buy natural gas. So it doesn't have a zero marginal cost. So we're going to start off with wind and solar. And we see is that 27% of the time, this combination generates 100 megawatts of power. So 27% of the time, you don't need natural gas at all. And so that's a 100% clean grid. But that also means that 73% of the time, you need to run your natural gas. 73% of hours. It turns out that it is on average, if you average all this, you need 23 megawatts of natural gas. So this is a 77% clean grid. So it's actually it's a very clean grid, 77% clean grid. It has natural gas. You don't need to run the natural gas that often, but you need it because sometimes the wind and the solar aren't available. And you need 83 megawatts of natural gas because there's 1 hour down here where you need 83 megawatts of power. And we're making assumptions here. There's no demand response or anything else in the system that can reduce demand, for example. There are other ways to attack this, but this is just a thought experiment of how you do this. Now, if we say, what's the cost of this? The cost of this is much cheaper than 100% natural gas. All right. Now, you probably look at this, you say, how can this be cheaper than this? You're building almost as much natural gas as this, and you're building all this solar and wind. This has to be more expensive. And it's not, because here's the thing. You have to buy natural gas for every megawatt hour of power here. Natural gas is expensive. Here, you're using mainly wind and solar. You're only buying natural gas in order to get you up to 100 megawatts. So you're buying a lot less natural gas. You save so much money buying less natural gas that more than you can build this and you save extra money. Okay, so now this is still, though, not 100% clean grid. So let's talk a little bit about, before I get there, I just say, I've given you sort of model, just sort of a very arm-waving, simplified schematic. Lots of people have done detailed engineering simulations of the US grid with varying levels of renewables. This is a particularly good report. It's 2021, so it's actually getting a little bit old. So I would definitely, if you're interested in sort of this problem done by engineers with very sophisticated modeling and assumptions, and including transmission and distribution and depreciation and all that stuff, that 2035 is the report to look at. And then there's some Net Zero America and this paper that was in Joule are also both very good. All right, so let me summarize this situation. All right, so this axis is the percentage of renewables, and this is the cost that we're paying. So what right now, the US is at about 20% renewables. Texas is actually above that, probably low 30s, but the US as a whole is about 20%. And we're paying whatever we're paying, 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. The wholesale price, the price of generation is more like 5.5 cents on average. The rest of it's profit and transmission distribution. Now, as we add renewable energy, the price is going to go down. It's going to go down, it's going to go down. And that's because when you add renewable energy, you don't have to buy as much natural gas. You're trading the cost of building the renewable energy versus the cost of buying natural gas. And as you build more renewable energy, you buy so much less natural gas that it actually reduces the price of energy. Then you hit some minimum point where the price starts going up again. It goes up again because as you add more renewables, you don't necessarily buy that much less natural gas as your renewable approaches 100%. Starts going up. And as you get to about 90% clean, you're paying about the same thing we're paying now. So we could have a 90% clean grid that we're paying what we're paying now. Now, people often talk about net zero. How do we get to zero emissions? Nobody has any idea how much that's going to cost because we don't really have the technology to do that. How do you decarbonize international airline flights? How do you decarbonize ocean shipping? There's about 5 or 10% of our emissions come from really hard to abate emissions. And so nobody has any idea what this last 10% is. Because of that, you will see some estimates that are just eye-poppingly expensive, $10 trillion. And again, that's the last few percent. And so as a strategy, people that want to slow down the transition, want to argue against this, they will focus relentlessly on the cost to going to net zero. And my point is, let's forget about net zero. Let's talk about 90%. Let's get rid of 90%. We can do that at basically no cost, or very low cost. Okay, so the game where we've solved this problem. We can, it's like problem solved. Good job, everyone. We can do this. So what's the problem? What's holding us up? Okay, this is not a scientific problem. We understand climate change. We understand how we need to reduce emissions. It's not a technical problem. We understand how to generate energy with solar and wind. We understand these things. There's nothing magic here. It's a political problem. Oil and gas are probably the single most powerful special interest that has ever existed in the history of humanity. It is a multi-trillion-dollar-a-year business. Anybody who thought they would say, okay, wind and solar, you beat us, time to start liquidating our business, is crazy. What they're doing is they're using their warehouses of money to essentially pay off compliant politicians to rig the market in favor of fossil fuels. I mean, you can see this going on in the Texas legislature right now. Okay, so, just look at the bills we're going through. They're all designed to disadvantage renewable energy, electrification, and encourage everybody by law, forcing people to continue to use fossil fuels. And you'll say, you might say, well, people don't like renewable energy. When I saw a report where people were trying to install a wind turbine somewhere, a solar farm somewhere, and there was a lot of local opposition. People don't like it. Whenever you look at the people who are opposed to installing fossil fuels, there may be some people who legitimately don't want it. But if you dig down enough, you always find greasy fossil fuel money behind a lot of the opposition to fossil fuel installations. The point I often like to make, I try to make this with conservative audiences because I think this might have resonance, is the US can turn their back on renewable energy. But you know who's not going to turn their back on renewable energy? China. China is building enormous amounts of renewable energy. To give you an idea, US electrical consumption is about 450 gigawatts on average. They are installing last 2 years, 2023, 2024, they installed about that much power, solar energy. Just 2 years, they built a US of solar energy. 2 years. Their ability to build stuff is really incredible. I mean, I certainly understand China is not a democracy of a beacon of democracy. I know there are a lot of issues with it, but I do admire the fact that they understand that renewable energy is a future in a way that US politicians do not. I'll show you two plots. This is solar and wind in China. This is solar and wind in India. This is a year, this is terawatt hours. You can think of this as energy. Whoops, that's weird. I thought I had some labels down here. I don't. So this is, if I remember correctly, this is coming close to 20% of their electricity in 2024, and this is about 10% of their electricity. So, I mean, these countries are exponentially increasing their renewable energy, and if the US doesn't do this, if we continue to lash ourselves to expensive, dirty fossil fuels, we are not going to be competitive in the 21st century. We're going to be using more expensive energy. And how can you compete with a country that has cheaper energy than you do? So let me, it's weird, my slide there didn't transfer over either. So let me just summarize. I have basically 3 points I want to make sure everyone comes away from this understanding. Number one, because of nonlinearities, we're on the brink of having really bad climate impacts. So you guys out there probably think climate change is a future problem. It hasn't affected me yet. It may not for decades. Let's hope that's true, knock on fake wood. But, some people are going to get wiped out. And things are going to get much worse. I'll just throw one other thing out. 5 years ago, nobody was talking about insurance as a crisis. Now it's a crisis. That emerged incredibly quickly. What's the next crisis? That's what I'm asking myself. That's what you all should be asking yourself. What?
There will be serious housing price.
Yeah. Yeah. We have the technology to largely solve this problem. Again, the last 10% is going to be challenging, but my attitude is I don't care about that. Let's get to 90%. Engineers are so clever. If we get to 90%, the last 10% will solve itself. That's the history of environmental problems. You look at ozone depletion, if you look at acid rain, those problems were solved much more cheaply than we thought because people are so clever. Once they understand there's a market for something, they will build it. That's why solar energy's dropped so rapidly. And lastly, this is really the problem. It's overcoming the power of fossil fuels to stop us. It's a democracy problem. This is not a scientific problem. It's not a technical problem. It's a problem of democracy. And with that, I'll wrap up and thank you for your attention.
Well, we have good time for questions and remarks if you have, or comments if you would like. So the floor is open. Dr. Kamalapati, can you please pass? No, we have online audience. Oh, okay.
Thank you, and very nice presentation. So you mentioned about the lobbying, right? So I understand that there is an industry that is willing to bribe people, but why it is always one party, political party, that's always on this side. And in the past, if you look at the history of environmental laws in this country, they're always bipartisan. If you go back to 70s, when EPA was established, or all the hazardous waste laws, all those laws are passed under Republican administrations.
Yeah.
But why, or I know we are all engineers here or ag folks here. So why do you think it is that it became such a political issue? It's not a scientific issue anymore, as you correctly pointed out, right? So it is one party says climate, the other party says screw this climate, right?
Yeah,
so
that's a really, really interesting question. And you're absolutely right. If you go back to the history, Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican, one of the most environmental presidents who set up the national park system. And if you go to the 50s, an environmentalist is likely to be a lawyer, Republican lawyer, as a blue collar steel mill worker. In fact, Reagan is the one who, or not Reagan, Nixon is the one who started the EPA. I think the real point that everything flowed from is Reagan. So Reagan is the one who says government is not the solution to the problem, government is the problem. And if you take that literally, then your position is that I don't want any government regulation. And solving the climate problem basically requires government intervention because at least until recently, fossil fuels were cheaper, but only if you didn't count their externalities. So there's been an economic case for replacing fossil fuels for a long time. Now, the case is just their absolute cost, even without externalities, is cheaper. But and so for a long time, this idea that we need the government to come in and the government's going to have to set a carbon tax or a cap and trade, that really rubbed the anti-government people the wrong way. And then what happened is at some point, it was probably the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. This unleashed this flood of money. The oil companies, basically the fossil fuel interests, started giving money to the small government people to stop them from regulating. And they just started giving money. And then the people who were getting the money stopped being small government. They just became pro fossil fuels. And now they're happy to pass laws that restrict consumer choice. They're happy to do exactly the things that they railed against, as long as it pushes fossil fuels on people. And that's what you can see all the laws going through the Texas legislature. I mean, those are not things that a small government conservative person would do, but it is someone who's on the who's a fossil fuel shill. They would do that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's you can definitely see that that's the big issue. I think that's sort of this evolution of what's happened.
Question here.
What are your thoughts on innovative ways that NGOs or scientists or people could do things that would resonate in people's mind that would change their behavior as well. For instance, I just saw today a briefing came to me through the AI that I set that Houston just announced a massive solar project that will charge the entire park, for example. It's so huge. It's a very
Oh, yeah,
iconic
I've seen
image.
that, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the sort of creative ways that will resonate when people, NGOs and all that would utilize research to show the advantages of solar energy, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, how do you know, what you're really asking is, you know, how do you break the power of the fossil fuel industry? And I don't think I know the answer to that. I think individual, let me start. So individually, everybody should sort of do their own part, because doing your own part in a lot of respects will make you better off. If you eat less meat, if you walk instead of drive, you know, saves you money, you'll be healthier, you'll do those things. You'll replace your lighting in your house with, I guess everybody has high energy lighting at this point. That wasn't true 10 or 15 years ago. So those are all individual actions that everyone should take. You know, I do know there are people who talk a lot about, you should talk to your neighbors about climate change. You know, if climate change comes up, don't sort of think, oh, I don't want to bring it up because it might be uncomfortable. You know, talk about it, explain why it concerns you, find common interests. If you talk to someone who likes hunting, say, hey, have you noticed that, you know, the seasons are changing? They might say, yeah, you know, I used to go ice fishing starting in November, but now it's January. You know, it's talk to people. So find kind of the common interest and do that. That's sort of the individual level. You know, if you can afford to put solar panels on your house, not everybody can. If you can, you should do that. I did it, and I bought a battery because I'm worried about the ERCOT grid. So if the power goes down, I still have power. So, you know, but I can afford it. Not everybody can, I realize. But I think that problem is not going to get us to the problem. It's a democracy problem here. It's a problem of getting people to vote actually in their best interests. You know, so I tell the students, vote, get your friends to vote, you know, organize, do stuff like that. I mean, that's really the solution. I don't really know anything more than that. I mean, you're fighting against a group that has a lot more money than you do. And, you know, they're really fighting for their lives. I think the fossil fuel interests see the end coming up, and they realize they're going to be out of business in 100 years. The question is, are they going to be out of business in 50 years or 30 years? Excuse me. So that's it. So I don't know the answer really to that, but it's really a democracy issue. We need to organize. We need to get people to the voting booth.
We have a question here.
I really enjoyed your presentation because you brought a lot of questions up, but mine was one when we had the blackout in Houston and the grid was down. What was the solution? Because right now it's going to be up in 100 temperature degrees for the summer. So have they made any adjustments for as trying to set up? Because it all boils down to money.
Yeah, so you know the blackout occurred because the natural gas system failed. So that's if you talk to a fossil fuel shill, they'll try to tell you that it was wind. Wind energy wasn't producing, but it was natural gas. They lost 30 gigawatts of natural gas power, and that was enough that it essentially cratered the whole grid. So ERCOT has done things to try to stabilize the grid. They last year, they held some power back as reserve. That drove the price up. So we're paying for it. But, you know, they're not, and, you know, this whole Texas Energy Fund, I don't know if you're familiar with that, they're building natural gas plants to act as kind of this backup peaker load, what they call peaker plants, to give power. It's very expensive, and it's basically they're just basically foisting money on fossil fuels because there are much cheaper ways to do it. I would be very worried. I wouldn't be very worried. I'd be slightly worried about blackouts. I think ERCOT and Greg Abbott realize that it's very bad for him politically if the power goes out. So they will do everything they can to stop it from going out. I mean, the real issue is a much longer term issue, which is just sort of competitiveness. You know, you can't be competitive if you're using expensive energy, and it's expensive energy that has air pollution, and the air pollution has social justice issues. It's always minority neighborhoods that are more polluted than non-minority neighborhoods. It's just bad for our economy. It's bad for the world. That's really the thing I worry much more about. Do we have a question here?
I think Okay, yeah, we have a question online. Thank you. You mentioned that carbon neutrality is very difficult to reach or maybe impossible. How do you relate this to the efforts to sequester carbon from different sectors like agriculture, forestry, etc.?
Yeah, so let me clarify. I didn't say it's impossible to reach. What I said was we don't have the technology today to do that last 10% of decarbonization. I fully believe in the inventiveness of engineers. I mean, take your cell phone out. You know, you can't believe how smart people are until you say, here's a problem. If you solve this problem, you will be rich. People will solve the problem. And so I think people will figure out how to do it. We just don't know yet. So what do I think about carbon sequestration? That's a really good question. I do think that ultimately we do need to be pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, because I think right now we are on track for what will be too much warming. And the only way to avoid that is to start pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. But I think that's a longer term. You do that after you get to zero emissions. Or, I mean, maybe carbon sequestration is your last few percent of that. But I think that's a future problem. Right now, we have the technology to stop emitting carbon, and that should be the first thing we do, rather than emit carbon, then try to figure out how to pull carbon out of the atmosphere at the same time. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I have an,
yeah, go ahead.
excuse me, I have a non-technical question. The easiest solution is to make all campaign contributions illegal. Do you agree with that? The other question that I'm going to ask you is that since you are a Houstonian, all of the electricity that we use around Houston, is it fuel generated electricity energy?
Okay, so the first question is about campaign contributions. You know, I think that, so I'm not going to say that all campaign contributions should be illegal, although I think that's a reasonable way to handle it. The real problem is you can't let billionaires give essentially unlimited amounts of money. You know, you saw Elon Musk gave $250 million. And, you know, for him, it's a great investment. He gives $250 million and then he makes billions of dollars back. You know, these people that are buying the politicians are making an incredibly good investment. You give $1 million to a politician and then they pass a law and you make $1 billion. So these politicians are selling themselves out extremely cheaply. And I do think that's really the problem. But, you know, you've got to get that by the Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court's the one who said you can't limit, basically effectively said you can't limit campaign contributions. I'm not a legal expert, but it was a Citizens United decision. You can read up on it yourself. So it's a democracy problem. So your second question is about generation. What was your question? Where's the power for Houston generated?
Here, 100% energy that Houston metropolitan is fuel, fossil fuel generated, right? Because I
Well,
don't see any wind turbines or any solar panels, very few on individual houses or hydroelectricity generated.
Yeah, there are some wind turbines that are further down the coast, like below Corpus Christi. But you know, the way to think about it is, you know, the grid, you kind of dump electrons in West Texas, and those all flow east. So, you know, when Rick Perry was governor, he built this big power line from West Texas to East Texas, basically the CREZ, Competitive Renewable Energy Zone. So they spent like $6 or $7 billion and it saved multiples of that. But I think a lot of the power in East Texas actually is coming from West Texas. It actually it just moves across the state. That's the way AC current works. You don't have to, you know, you have all these generators dumping electrons in, you have people pulling out, but it's not like this plant is next to me, so I'm only getting electrons from that. I think that's not the right way to think about the grid. If you build more renewable energy out west and you dump it into the grid, it's going to help Texas, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin.
We have one more question here.
Thank you. Great presentation. A quick question. Yeah, we have right now these renewable energy sources or means, technologies like solar and wind. What's the future? Because we have to put many alternatives to encourage whoever have another mean that contribute to the climate change, such as I guess heard in the news something about nuclear fusion in
And
in
nuclear
Cali-
fusion is the energy source that's always 10 to 30 years away. When I was in high school in the 1970s, I did debate, and one of the topics we did was energy. And I remember a team running an affirmative case against us about how fusion was like 10 years away. And fusion is always, so fusion, forget about fusion. Nuclear, I have very mixed feelings about nuclear. I understand there are people who like nuclear a lot, but nuclear is very expensive. And the question is, how do you get there? How do you get to a world where we have cheap nuclear power? We know how innovation works, which is you build lots of things. If you want to know why we have cheap flat screen TVs, it's because they built a gazillion of them. When they first came out, they were very expensive. They build a gazillion of them, and then they're cheap. If you ask about nuclear, we could eventually get cheap nuclear power, but you got to build a lot of them. And the question is, how do you get there? Is the government going to come in and pay for the first 100 plants? So whenever people come to me and they say, I support nuclear, I ask them, what's your policy? And they never have an answer. I've never had a good answer from somebody about what their policy was to get to a world that has nuclear power, because the market's not building nuclear. The market is installing solar and wind. Nobody's building nuclear unless they can get some sort of guarantee from the government that, like, the ratepayers will eventually pay it off. And so I don't see, so I understand nuclear is attractive. I don't see a path there. And it's mainly because wind and solar are so cheap. You just got to build enough of it. You build enough of it, and maybe nuclear will play a role as a dispatchable energy source at some point in the future, but it's never, I don't ever see it being a major contributor to the grid, except in, counterbalancing the intermittency of wind and solar. So we know how to do that. It's very cheap.
Well, I think before we close, your question about composition of energy in Texas, one of our graduate students, Kenza Akhtar, she's working with Dr. Awal and myself on an energy transition. According to our last analysis, about 33% of the energy that is used here in Texas comes from solar and wind energy on an annual basis. So about 33 to 34%. So we made some progress during the last 15 years. But as of now, right now, it's about 33%.
Yeah, and that's 2024. If you go back to 2010, it was 6%. It tells you how fast we're building renewable energy here.
Correct. So I think, we have one quick question before we adjourn.
Great presentation. What are your thoughts on the biofuels?
So I think that there may be a way to make biofuel make sense, and that might be, for example, how you do international airline flights. I think you have to be very careful about biofuels, that you're not cutting down forests. A lot of cases in the past have been, we want biofuels. Well, let's chop down a bunch of this forest and start growing, palm oil or something like that. You don't want your energy source to work at cross purposes to diversity and forests and things like that. Biofuels are also quite inefficient. So the photosynthesis is about 0.6 of a watt per square meter of power you get out of biofuels, and that is really low. You need a lot of area if biofuels want to make up a big chunk of your energy. So again, I think it's probably okay for very niche applications like airline flights. I don't think there's any way to electrify a 787 flying to Munich. And so biofuels could play a role in that, but it's going to be very small. We already know how to build cars that don't run on fuel, electric. I drove an electric car here. Electric cars are much better than internal combustion cars. We're right on the edge of electric cars being cheaper than internal combustion cars. So I think most things we can electrify. There's probably a few things we can't, and biofuels may be a role for those, as long as we build them and as long as we develop them in a way that doesn't work at cross purposes to other environmental problems.
Well, the discussion is very important, and the topic is timely. Well, let's thank our presenter here. Thank you, and see you in the fall for the spring semester. Thank you for supporting this seminar series. We first get a picture of the graduate student for this presentation, and then we're gonna follow up with a new picture for the land grant series. All right, so we will have a picture of the students who presented, and then we'll take a picture with our visitor. So if you want to be in the picture, please join us. Excellent job. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
I